Russia's ballistic sub moved like a ghost. Hawaii's key sensors went offline. 5 minutes later, the US chose offense. That's the moment this story begins. Tonight we show you how 3 F-35s and an EA-18G threaded a corridor of S-400 fire with 15 long-range CLRMs, and why a split-second jamming window decided whether Vladivostok burned or the strike failed. If you've wondered how Deterrence breaks under pressure, watch the countdown from encrypted launch coordinates to the first secondary detonation in Drydock 2. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. 5 minutes, that's all Washington had after the confirmation ping came through. R-30 Bulava M test profile source platform K549. The submarine near Hawaii stayed quiet on comms and noise, but the launch plume hit a narrow gap in A/SPY6 coverage. As radar sectors rotated, the gap was brief, seconds really, yet it compressed the response timeline and stripped out the luxury of deliberation. Analysts flagged the track as a test shot, not a strike, but the readout showed a window for a follow-up launch if Moscow wanted to press pressure into coercion. Defense alone wouldn't restore deterrence. They needed a counter with speed, control, and a clean conventional signature. PACOM pushed an alert across the national network. Inside the National Command Authority loop, the options board came up fast, red and amber tiles filling the screens. Wait and allow a second launch window that could exploit sensor cycling again, or act now with a conventional precision strike that ran the risk of drawing out Russia's Pacific Fleet and air defenses. The contingency file, marked Iron Storm, sat on the top row, pre-briefed, updated the week prior, and built around a small footprint package that could be launched on short notice. Its premise was simple: hold escalation thresholds, show reach, and keep attribution ambiguous enough to avoid automatic nuclear responses. Platform logic drove the selection. F-35s could slip in with low radar returns, fuse sensor data, and carry internal standoff weapons without blowing the radar picture. An EA-18G Growler could sit off-axis and shape the spectrum, opening a limited-time door through search and fire control radars without announcing a full air campaign. Nuclear options never made the shortlist. Those required Allied consultation, dual-key planning, and they slammed into clear red lines. The crisis demanded a controlled signal, not a ladder jump. Alternatives hit the table and fell off it. Tomahawk saturation promised volume, but survivability against layered S-400 batteries and modern point defenses looked poor without days of shaping. A bomber package carried payload and range, yet alert cycles, tanker orchestration, and signature management pushed timelines past the edge of the decision window. The F-35A and Growler combination answered the two hardest demands: speed to task and low observability at the moment of truth. Planners then ran the route math. The launch corridor had to sit outside primary S-400 umbrellas while still giving the missiles clean terrain following lines. Terrain masking along coastal ridges would keep radar horizons short. Tanker tracks were drawn to preserve on-station time without pulling the Growler too far forward. Every mile counted because the jamming window would be finite and release geometry needed tight synchronization. Weapons choice sealed the design. 15 AGM-158 CLRMs would ride low observable profiles, updating mid-course and riding terrain contours to cut exposure. Hard and semi-hardened naval infrastructure sat on the target list. A dry dock where steel warped under load, fuel storage with vulnerable manifolds, and a mountainside pen that hid boats but trapped blast. Each F-35A would carry 5 CLRMs internally, keeping the jet's signatures down until release. The Growler would time its emissions bursts to suppress the right bands at the right seconds, not a wall of noise, but precise cuts in the enemy's sensing picture. The calculus balanced risk with control. A 3-jet strike element and 1 jammer kept it conventional, fast, and deniable enough to avoid triggering automatic nuclear responses while showing that distance wouldn't save targets. Iron Storm moved from file to action. Orders cut. Air crews already briefed slid into the sequence without ceremony. The moment Washington stopped driving the timeline, a new clock started, measured in seconds of electronic warfare coverage, missile time to go, and the angles needed for clean release. Now the outcome hinged on whether that narrow window would open wide enough, long enough, for 15 missiles to get a running start. Could one electronic warfare window decide if 15 missiles survive a gauntlet of S-400s? The strike package crossed the line and the clock started. The Growler slid into its standoff lane and began carving the spectrum, not with a wall of noise, but with timed pulses and deceptive techniques aimed at known search and fire control sets. Its pods worked band by band, shaping what those radars believed they saw and when they saw it. The goal was simple: delay illumination, force errors, and hold a narrow opening long enough for release. The F-35s flew in emissions control, passive sensors up, letting the Growler's work set the stage while they held their own signatures flat. Russian air defense doctrine put layers in front of them. S-400 batteries watched broad sectors, point defenses guarded key facilities, and interceptors stood ready to sprint off the runway. Any early radar paint on the F-35s risked lighting a fuse before the missiles were even free, so the jets kept their angles tight and their power changes smooth, staying inside a planned window, while the jammer suppressed the bands that mattered most in that slice of sky. They needed seconds, not minutes, and they had to earn them without tripping a wider scramble. Release geometry came next. 3 F-35s, staggered on timing and lateral spacing, each with 5 CLRMs. Flight paths were deconflicted before push, with mixed altitudes and offsets to complicate engagement math. The first shooter took the north line, the second split center low, the third held south high before descending. Spacing mattered, it prevented overlapping contrails, reduced correlated returns, and set the missiles up to fan out without crossing each other's terrain following arcs. On the clock, each jet fed coordinates, cross-checked target updates, and pushed weapons clean. The electronic warfare tactics were layered. The EA-18G kept a standoff range and executed selective blinding on key radar bands tied to search and fire control, opening and closing gates in rhythm with the F-35's approach. Inside the package, the F-35s used passive geolocation to tag emitters and confirm which radars were truly hot versus decoy sets, then adjusted headings by small degrees to ride the soft spots. They kept transmission low, relying on pre-briefed data and brief bursts when needed, extending the Growler's effects without announcing every move. Once free, the CLRMs hugged the terrain, dropping into low corridors. They rode updates mid-course, refining target aim points off stored maps and fresh inputs, then split into final lanes. One stream, bent toward Drydock 2, set to strike structural nodes rather than open water. Another took the fuel depot, aiming at manifold clusters and containment weak points. The last stream cut toward the submarine pen carved into the mountain, timing arrivals to hit load-bearing sections in sequence. The missiles flew low and quiet, trading speed for survivability as they crept under radar horizons and used curves in the coastline to break line of sight. Defense met offense fast. 12 interceptors launched, trails arcing up from different pads. 5 found true hits, hard kills that punched holes in the missile streams. The others bit on false tracks, chased ghosts, or arrived late because the jamming window had pushed their tracking math off by seconds. That margin mattered. Enough CLRMs made it through to finish the run. Drydock 2 took structural damage that collapsed key sections and jammed cranes in place. The fuel depot ruptured, and pooled fires ran along channels, sending rolling fireballs across the harbor. At the mountain-cut submarine pen, the first blasts drove shock through the galleries and set off secondary detonations in nearby magazines. The synchronized impacts crippled Vladivosto's harbor and left an estimated 1,850 sailors dead or missing. As fires spread and radars fought through residual interference, the wider theater shifted, markets swung, allies called emergency sessions. Deterrence math changed overnight, and both sides began recalculating what a second window would cost. Deterrence held by inches. One jamming window turned a ladder of escalation into a sharp, controlled signal instead of a wider nuclear exchange. The cost still landed hard. Global markets shed $1.3 trillion in 24 hours, a blunt reminder that limited strikes between nuclear powers carry unlimited consequences for everyone watching their screens.